Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this very exciting day. I think you can feel the excitement here this morning with all of our families here. We're so proud. I want to welcome you to PUC and to the great community of Sault Ste. Marie. My name is Elliot. I'm the Manager of Strategy and Brand here at PUC Services. I would first like to acknowledge with respect that we are in the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory, that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Bawatine. Bawatine is the home of Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. We are very honored to have the Right Honourable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Sault Ste. Marie Member of Parliament Terry Sheehan, Mayor of Sault Ste. Marie, His Worship Matthew Shoemaker, and President and CEO of PUC Services, Robert Brewer, here today to launch Canada's first community-wide smart grid. I also want to acknowledge Andy McPhee, Chair of the PUC Services Board of Directors, Pat McCauley, Vice Chair of the PUC Distribution Board of Directors, and the many other board members here today. Today marks a monumental day for PUC and the community of Sault Ste. Marie, as we continue to demonstrate our leadership in the energy sector, our innovative and resilient team, and our commitment to a greener, more sustainable future. It is now my pleasure to introduce Robert Brewer, President and CEO of PUC Services.
Thank you, Katie, and good morning, everyone. Today is a day of celebration. It's an achievement of our team and our community, but it's also a day of family. Today, of course, is Bring Your Kids to Work Day here at PUC, and you can imagine the stories that these kids will be telling their friends and their teachers on Monday about their visit to where their mom and their dad and their grandma and their grandpa work, and how they also got to meet the Prime Minister. And how cool is that? I want to thank the Right Honourable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for being here today. Not only to help us commemorate the launch of what is an extremely important project for PUC and for our community, but to also create some pretty special memories for all of the families here today. And hopefully you had some fun this morning, the opportunity to meet a lot of the kids and even to see them building a mini electric vehicle. So today we're here to celebrate the launch of the Sault Smart Grid, which is a modernized, cutting-edge grid that is transforming the way that PUC delivers electricity. And it really is an example of what we can achieve when we work together towards a common goal. And this includes the support and the collaboration of the federal government, who contributed almost $8 million towards the project. And without this support, the Sault Smart Grid would not have been possible. So I want to acknowledge the Honourable Member of Parliament for Sault Ste. Marie, Terry Sheehan. Terry has been with us on this journey from the beginning. He's acted as a persistent advocate for the Smart Grid, and he's been a persistent advocate for our community. And we're sincerely grateful for the support of Terry over the years to make this idea a reality. Along this journey, we have also had the unwavering support of municipal leadership. As a community-owned utility, that support has been crucial in getting this project to the finish line. So I want to acknowledge and thank Mayor Matthew Shoemaker for his tireless efforts to move Sault Ste. Marie forward, and for his support and belief in PUC's vision for the future. I'd also like to take a moment and acknowledge former Mayor Christian Provenzano, who was previously a member of PUC's Board of Directors, for his work and his support towards the goal of really making the Sault Smart Grid a differentiator for our community. And I think we have achieved just that. I'd like to thank the PUC Board of Directors as well for their unrelenting support, their patience with us, and their bold, forward-looking vision for our local utility. With respect to our partners, I want to thank Black & Veatch, who was our EPC contractor. I'd like to thank Surveillant, who was our software provider. And I'd like to make a special note of all the numerous local contractors who contributed in getting this project to the finish line. So we're grateful for their commitment, both to the project and to our community. And finally, I want to thank the staff here at PUC. I can say without a doubt that we have some of the most innovative, some of the most resilient and hardworking employees that you'll find anywhere. They have made the Sault Smart Grid the modernized grid for the future that it is. And to all of you, the staff here, you will forever be a part of PUC's history. And I know that with the team we have here, this is just the beginning of many accomplishments to come. The Sault Smart Grid brings many benefits to our community. We're seeing energy savings of about 2.7%, which is precisely what we thought we would get. And we're seeing that already. We're seeing shorter outages. We're seeing fewer people impacted. And we're seeing a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions as a result. This project has immediately transformed our grid into a modernized grid that will help us support the future of PUC and the future of Sault Ste. Marie. The energy sector is rapidly transforming. We will see more change in the next 5 years than we have in the previous 50. The Sault Smart Grid, the first community-wide smart grid in Canada, will help PUC successfully navigate that change. Together, we are setting an example for the entire nation. We're showcasing how utilities can use innovative technology and a commitment to sustainably transform our communities for the better. And at PUC, we are so proud to be a leader in that transformation. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Matthew Shoemaker, our Mayor, to say a few words.
Thank you, Rob, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here to celebrate such an important day for such an important project. Le fait que nous avons le Premier ministre ici pour cette annonce démontre l'importance de ce projet à notre communauté. Merci, Premier ministre Trudeau, de nous joindre aujourd'hui et pour l'investissement que ton gouvernement a mis, non juste dans ce projet, mais dans le futur de Sault Ste. Marie. Thank you as well to MP Sheehan for his dogged advocacy. Projects of this magnitude, as Rob said, cannot happen, cannot come to fruition without the support of our government partners. And Terry was instrumental in getting the significant financial commitment from the Government of Canada. This is a project that PUC staff and the board have been working on hard for a number of years, and I'm really excited to see it move forward. We've also, before it even became a concept that the board was discussing, there were local champions for it, like Steve Butland, the former mayor and MP who is here, who talked about this potential of this program endlessly. That I would say planted the seed for this idea to flourish into something that the board could really dig its heels into, or dig its teeth into and see through. But the project would not be here today if it were not for Rob Brewer and his team at PUC. The PUC is an asset for the community, and I don't just mean that on our balance sheet. As it continues to pursue innovative projects that improve services and reliability for customer, it will strengthen and help diversify our economy. The Smart Grid project solidifies Sault Ste. Marie's position as a leader in the energy industry. We do not call ourselves the North American capital of alternative energy for nothing. We are the first city in our country to implement a community-wide smart grid, and now that it is in operation, Sault Smart Grid will make our energy infrastructure more reliable, reduce energy loss, and lead to more innovative solutions for companies who want to establish themselves here. I also want to point out, importantly, that thanks to the investment that the Government of Canada has made, this project will not impact residents' bills, and that was of the utmost importance to City Council. Merci à tous pour être ici aujourd'hui, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Rob, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you ever so much for being here today on this very special day. And as has been mentioned before, this has been a long time in the making. I was on City Council with Mr. Butland when this concept came. And I am proud to be the seconder of that resolution declaring Sault Ste. Marie the alternative energy capital of North America. And we certainly have done a lot to deserve to be called that. But this smart grid was conceived by smart people. It was built by very, very smart people. Your parents, your mom and dad, were the ones that made today happen. So thank your parents for me tonight when you go home for allowing us to grow as a community, to create opportunities for other families that wish to live, work and play in Sault Ste. Marie. We're attracting attention, we're attracting investment. We have Oklahoma Steel going from a coal-based process to electric arc. It's like taking 1 million gas-powered cars off the road, and it's creating jobs for generations ahead like you. And I know the PUC. These are great middle-class jobs, and we've been supporting the middle class from the get-go as well. So I wanted to say particularly congratulations to the board, to the staff, the workers on the front line. Thank you, merci beaucoup. And I can tell you that the Prime Minister has been saying it since day one, that the economy and the environment go together. They're not separate. And we have lived that, and we've lived that in Sault Ste. Marie. So again, this is a perfect example of when the federal government works with the municipality to fight climate change, to create critical infrastructure that is going to be utilized today and tomorrow, and is going to continue to make Sault Ste. Marie the great place it is to work, play, and live. But without further ado, the Prime Minister of Canada, the person who has been leading the way as we decarbonize, as we build a brighter future, a future that fights climate change and creates opportunity for our young people. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the Prime Minister of Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry, for your words, for your incredible leadership of these past 8 years in bringing forward not just the concerns and the hopes and dreams of the Sioux, but actually acting on it in so many different ways. As Terry pointed out, we've known for a long time, as a party, as a government, that there is no choice to be made between a clean environment and a strong economy. The only way to build a strong future is to do them together. And Terry, you have embodied that, and the Sioux has embodied that in so many different ways that I'm really excited to be here today. Rob, thank you for showing me around the facilities and the amazing team here. Mayor Shoemaker, Matt, thank you for all your leadership on this as well. It is great to be here in this extraordinary city, which is the meeting point of two great lakes, but also the meeting point of two great countries. And the way we work together, the way we demonstrate the path towards the future is really, really important. And I got to say, having spent so much time over the past hour with young people who are here to see what their parents have been doing and their grandparents have been doing here, I got to tell you, it is exciting to see you here. And I'll be honest with you, I'm here for exactly the same reason you are. To see the amazing work that your parents have been doing. Because what they've been doing here at PUC matters, and doesn't just matter for you, doesn't just matter for the future of this community, it matters for the future of Canada. The leadership that the Sioux has shown, the leadership that PUC has shown in moving towards being the first community in Canada with a fully smart grid is enormous. And the fact that you did it in a way that is actually bringing down costs to consumers, to homeowners across the city, is and should be an inspiration to communities right across the country. Because right now, I'll admit it, kids, the world is a pretty complicated and sometimes scary place. We have big geopolitical factors, conflict, challenges around supply chain, it means getting things here from all our partners overseas. But it's also a complicated place because of climate change, because of anxiety about everything changing so fast, The people are worried about the future and about whether there's going to be success for them in the future. And a lot of what leaders and governments need to do is reassure people, is show people that not only is the future going to be bright, but it's going to have a great place for you and the families you're going to be building in this community and across the country. And taking steps like this, where the federal government stepped up to support partners here in the Soo, to make the investments necessary to leave this community better off, more resilient, more able to adapt to the challenges that we know we're going to be facing in the coming years, but also able to draw on the opportunities that are coming. Algoma Steel switching towards electric arc, that's a huge thing. It's also going to require an awful lot of electricity to replace that coal. And as a community and as a country, we have to make sure we're getting the very best and the maximum out of our renewable electricity, our hydro, our power sources that are going to be cleaner and getting us to a net zero. Part of that is making sure that our cities can respond to that, and that's exactly what has been done here. It's really, really important to see that what was done here can and should be done right across the country and indeed around the world. Because that's where the future is going. And that's why we stepped up as a government to be the partners that this community needed. Because there's folks out there who still think the best way to get things done is to pick fights. That's not what it is. It's what Canadians always know how to build a strong future, rolling up our sleeves and leaning in on it together to solve these challenges, to solve these problems. And a big part of the future is going to be the people who can make it work, who can both repair those power lines and install the meters and the wireless towers that is going to make these smart systems work, the engineers that are going to run these systems, the people who are going to travel across North America telling other people how easy it was to do and how successful it is as a transition. This is what leadership is all about. That's what we're seeing right here. A community coming together, optimistic and ambitious enough to invest in itself, invest in its future. Well, that's paying off. And it's paying off in really big ways, because once you have a grid like this, we're better able to adjust for the future. The electric car charging stations that are being put in is helping folks, even in an area with long driving distance between communities, are comfortable about knowing that there's going to be the reliable power there for them to go electric, to protect the environment, to save money, and to build a better future. These past weeks, we've been talking a lot about the price on pollution and the challenges that we have in both fighting climate change and supporting families while we do it. And that's why we decided 8 years ago that putting a price on carbon emissions, a price on pollution, was, according to all the experts around the world, the best way to drive down emissions. But what we did with it is not only do we put a price on pollution, but we return more money to 8 out of 10 families every 3 months than the price on pollution costs them. It's a way of fighting climate change and making sure that families still find life affordable. But one of the things that we found as we're looking at what families are spending money on, families who still use home heating oil, is more expensive, more emitting, more costly than heating with electric or heating with other ways. So we decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to help those families get off of home heating oil. So the federal government, because right now with this grid you have here, there's about over 250,000 people in Ontario, a lot of them in Northern Ontario, who still rely on oil for heating. Now, if you were to shift your oil heating to a heat pump, you could save thousands of dollars a year. But the fact is, an electric heat pump costs a lot up front, even though it'll save you thousands of dollars a year for the coming years. So as a federal government, we've stepped up. We've stepped up with programs that are going to allow people to switch and to install a home heating pump and pay it off with the savings over the coming decade. That's making sure you can do it up front and save money for the long term while being good for the environment and taking advantage of this amazing smart grid. And what's more, in areas where the provincial government wants to partner with us, and there's already 3 provinces that have done it, and more to come, and hopefully Ontario will sign on, we're delivering free heat pumps installed to low-income families. We're doing that in 3 provinces, and we're going to help more right across the country. That's what our 3-year pause on the carbon price on home heating oil is, so that people can take advantage of this transition to heat pumps. Because as your community grid is getting stronger and cleaner and greener, this is an opportunity to draw on that cleaner, green, efficient electricity to heat your homes in ways that are going to save you money too. I draw out this example because it's an example that everything goes together. Fighting climate change, making life more affordable, building great jobs, great careers, and great livable communities for decades to come. It takes leadership. It takes smart policy. It takes a clear vision of where the future is and how we're going to get there in the best possible way. There's still people out there who say, no, we got to cross our arms and pretend that climate change isn't happening, and we'll deal with it one day in the future when it gets much worse. I'm sorry, people in the Soo have seen the forest fires from this past summer. You've seen the extreme weather events, the heat waves. You can't look at our kids and say, yeah, it's going to be all right, we'll let you fight climate change 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when you're in place, because we can't be bothered now. No, nobody wants to say that. We need to be taking care of our kids now, putting good food on the table, supporting them, getting them great educations, getting them great opportunities in good communities, and we've got to be making sure that the future is strong too. And 8 years ago, when we started talking about the need to fight climate change and the need to take real, big, ambitious steps to do it, there was a lot of talk about the consequences if we don't do it. But there was also lots of talk about the opportunities we'd have if we did it. But now we're getting to see those opportunities for real. As Algoma switches to electric arc. As other steel companies around the country are doing that too. As we're getting investments from big companies like Volkswagen and Stellantis, big mining interests coming in, realize that Canadian lithium and processing and extracting is a huge part of our future and the reliable supply chain that our friends and allies around the world want. There is a tremendous opportunity here in Canada, and here in the Soo, it embodies that. You have both the natural resources and the knowledge how to develop them, and the innovation and hard work required to do it in the right ways, in ways that are going to create good jobs and good careers for years to come. On doit se sentir excité par l'avenir, même si c'est difficile ces jours-ci. Parce que l'avenir qu'on est en train de bâtir, c'est un avenir à l'image du futur qu'on veut pour nos enfants. On a du travail à faire, mais le leadership qu'a démontré cette communauté, avec le travail que vous avez accompli, avec l'annonce qu'on fait aujourd'hui d'un grid intelligent, d'un réseau intelligent, c'est un exemple et un modèle à suivre pour tous. Alors, je suis tellement content de pouvoir célébrer ça avec vous, mais surtout de parler de ça avec des gens à travers le pays dans les années à venir. Back to you guys, boys and girls here. The example that your parents are setting is going to make sure there's not just a better future for you and your classmates, But there's going to be a better future for kids right across the country and eventually around the world, as the leadership that has come out of the Sioux is demonstrating a concrete, practical, successful path into a brighter future for us all. So it is a real pleasure to be here today to celebrate, a real pleasure to be here to thank all the collected leaders, both beside me and here in the audience, from the board to the line workers to everyone, for everything they've done to get us here and to remind us, especially in front of all our kids, that the future is bright and it has every reason to be. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
I think we get to cut a ribbon now? Yeah. Come in, Max. Carefully labeled.
Okay, so we're going to hold that. We're going to get one quick photo and then we'll cut it. All right, can everyone count us down? Let's do the countdown from 5, okay? 5.
We will now start with the question and answer period. Nous allons maintenant commencer avec la conférence de presse. Une question suivie. First question goes to Elaine Della Matea from the Sault Ste.
Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. You talk a lot about climate change and the economy going together, but recent reports suggest Canada is not even close to reaching its goals for greenhouse gas emissions, or reductions, sorry. What will your government do to make any changes to make sure it reaches those reduction levels? And how will it do that, given the issues like high inflation, shortage of skilled workers, mental health and addictions? Where does greenhouse gas emissions actually fit on the pecking order?
The fight against climate change is essential in the fight to build better communities, a strong economy, and more affordability for Canadians. We know how many billions of dollars extreme weather events, from floods to wildfires to heat waves, ends up costing our communities, our country. We know that fighting climate change and creating climate-resilient infrastructure is essential to building the future. That's why 8 years ago, from a standing start, because the previous Conservative government had done nothing in the fight against climate change, we put in place the most ambitious plan and actions to fight climate change that any Canadian government has ever seen. And we've done it at the same time as Conservative provincial premiers have been pulling back on the fight against climate change, not stepping up in the fight against climate change. So that's why it's so hard in Canada. And we're going to continue to do these hard things because it's about the future we have. Just over the past 2 years, Canada has bent the curve on emissions faster than any other of the large economies in the G7. We are on track. We're drawing in global investment to create those good jobs. Talk to the people in St. Thomas, Ontario, about the impact that the 3,000 direct jobs, the 30,000 indirect jobs that Volkswagen is going to bring in a battery plant that they're building, that's going to draw on not just Canadian electricity, but Canadian resources, Canadian supply chains, Canadian workers, Canadian expertise. The world is changing. That's not a question anymore. The question is, do we have the right plan to respond to these changes? And everything we've shown over the past years is showing that increasing ambition as we step up. Don't let anyone tell you that the focus on affordability means we have to step back on climate change, because that means you're going to be paying way more in the coming years to clean up for the inaction we have now. That's my biggest disagreement with Conservative politicians these days, that don't understand that the cost of inaction on climate change is massively large, and it's going to be borne by these kids we're here celebrating today.
Just a follow-up question. As you're aware, Algoma Steel is building its electric arc furnaces, which will significantly reduce carbon emissions. But in order to run both those furnaces together, there's still pieces of the puzzle that are missing. While the province announced a new transmission line from Sudbury to the Sault several weeks ago, there's still other pieces that this PUC would like to see the province approve applications to get that power to Algoma Steel. How will you convince the provincial government to approve those applications and fast-track them?
Well, first of all, you don't have to tell me about the great leadership that Algoma Steel is showing. I showed up with $400 million to make sure that happened, because that's part of building that better future that we're all relying on, not just here in the Sault, but as people around the world are looking for cleaner steel, more environmentally done, and to a higher quality, which is one of the benefits of electric arc over the traditional coal-fired steel processes. So, yes, it's an exciting part of the future, but we're going to need to make sure we're powering it properly. That's where our conversations with provinces across the country who are responsible for power generation are so ambitious. That's why we've put in place, for the first time, tax credits that will flow to provincial and public utilities to make sure that they can make the conversions. That's why we're looking at new projects, including nuclear projects, small modular reactors, and perhaps even full sizes in places where that makes sense, because nuclear is a low-emitting part of the future that we need for the baseload power that the innovation and the growth that Canada is going to see. We are working very, very hard on it, and we're going to make sure that the province shows up for the Sault and that everyone shows up for a brighter future.
Mike McDonald, CTV News. Since October 7th, incidents of hate are rising in Canada. How concerned are you about the rising threat, and what more can your government do to ease the tension?
Well, first of all, I think we all need to be extremely concerned about the rise in tensions, the rise in threats of violence, the rise in actual acts of violence, and the rise in hatred. And I think one of the most important things for all of us to do is to remember who we are as Canadians. When the Quebec City mosque shooting happened, members of the Jewish community stepped up in support of the local mosque here in the Sault. When there were terrible incidents of antisemitism in Canada and in the United States over the past years, the Muslim community showed up at the synagogue here in the Sault. Because Canadians stand up for each other. We hear each other's pain and grief and support each other. And yes, what's happening in the Middle East right now is causing a lot of devastating emotions. Fear, anger, grief on all sorts of different communities, but particularly both the Muslim and the Jewish communities across Canada. And what we need to do as Canadians is remember who we are as we lean on each other, as we go out and visit our friends in the Jewish community, stand with our friends in the Muslim community, participate in calls for peace, for significant humanitarian pause, for getting hostages out, getting Canadian citizens out of Gaza, flowing in humanitarian aid and coming together as a community, not because we're all going to agree in every way on the next steps going forward, but because we can all agree that we need to be there for each other and that we don't wish ill on any of our neighbors in this country, regardless of what's happening around the world. So I want to thank all the community leaders right across the country who've been working so hard to bring together Canadians who are scared, who are angry, to remember who they are, to listen to each other, and to work together to build a better future and more peace here in Canada, because that's how we help create a lasting solution in the Middle East.
The rural and northern immigration pilot, any plans to make that permanent?
It has been extraordinarily successful to see people coming into rural and northern areas, optimistic about the communities they're contributing to, the jobs they're going to do. We know at the same time there are challenges around housing, including in rural and northern areas, that we're going to need to address, which is why we've moved forward with such ambitious plans on housing, with a housing accelerator that's going to create hundreds of thousands of homes over the coming years, with rapid housing initiatives, with a GST rebate on the building of new apartment buildings. These are things that are going to respond to the need for growing housing while we continue to bring in people from around the world to contribute and build our communities even stronger. It's a challenging time, but it's a time that should leave us all very optimistic, and we will continue to be strong on managing immigration in responsible ways that grows our population and creates more economic success for everyone.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tyler Griff from the Canadian Press. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in New Delhi this morning that the U.S. wants to see Canada moving its investigation forward on Hardeep Singh Nijjar, and that India needs to help make it happen. Has there been any progress, and if not, should the U.S. be taking a sterner tone with India on Canada's behalf?
From the very beginning, when we learned of credible allegations that agents of the Indian government were involved in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil, we reached out to India to ask them to work with us on getting to the bottom of this matter. We also reached out to our friends and allies like the United States and others to work on this really serious violation of international law and of sovereignty of a democracy. This is something that we are taking very, very seriously. We will continue to work with all partners as law enforcement and investigative agencies continue to do their work. Canada is a country that will always stand up for the rule of law, because if might starts to make right again, if bigger countries can violate international law without consequences, then the whole world gets more dangerous for everyone.
And as a follow-up, India's High Commission in Canada says that its High Commissioner Sanjay Kumar Verma was invited by Liberal MP Chandra Arya to attend an event on Parliament Hill. Do you think that invitation was appropriate, given you say his government is not cooperating in the investigation into the death of Nijjar and is undermining the safety of our diplomats?
We have been very, very clear that we want to work constructively with India on this very serious matter. From the very beginning, we shared the real allegations that we are deeply, deeply concerned about, but we have reached out to the Indian government and to partners around the world to get to the bottom of this, to take it seriously. That's why we were so disappointed when India violated the Vienna Convention and arbitrarily revoked the diplomatic immunity of over 40 Canadian diplomats in India. Think about it from our perspective. We have serious reasons to believe that agents of the government of India could have been involved in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil, and India's response is to kick out a whole bunch of Canadian diplomats by violating their rights under the Vienna Convention. That is of concern to countries around the world, because if a given country can just decide that their diplomats of another country are no longer protected, that makes international relations more dangerous and more serious. But every step of the way, we have tried to work constructively and positively with India, and we will continue to. And that means continuing to work with Indian government diplomats. This is not a fight we want to be having right now. But we will unequivocally always stand up for the rule of law, because that's who Canada is.
John Castell, CBC News. A number of your own MPs have written to you directly calling for both the release of hostages and immediate ceasefire. At what point are you prepared to join these calls, and can you answer that in French?
All Liberal MPs are united, as are just about all Canadians, united in wanting to see the violence reduced against civilians in the Middle East. We need to see humanitarian aid flowing in. We need to see the Jewish hostages released by Hamas. We need to see civilians of other nationalities like Canada continue coming out of Gaza. And we need to start building that lasting peace and security in the region. It is not too soon to do that. So even as we're calling for a significant humanitarian pause, we want to start working to how we're going to get to that two-state solution, how we're going to get to a secure and prosperous Palestinian state alongside a secure and prosperous Israel. That's the end goal on this. That's what we are all united in trying to focus on as Canadians.
We have time for one more question.
Good morning, Alex Flood, Sault Ste, Village Media. Mr. Trudeau, this community is obviously still in mourning following last month's devastating shootings, 4 innocent lives claimed, including 3 children. Police confirmed the incidents were an act of intimate partner violence. What is your government going to do to ensure that intimate partner violence doesn't claim any more innocent lives, not only here in the Sioux, but in every community across the country?
The tragedy that hit the community here a number of weeks ago was heartbreaking for everyone, not just here, but right across the country. We were all grieving for the community and for those beautiful children. We know that there is so much more to do to counter intimate partner violence. We have a gender-based violence strategy that we moved forward with a number of years ago. But there are so many different parts of this. There's a need to step up in our support on mental health and wellness. And that's why part of our $200 billion investment in healthcare over the coming years, working with the provinces, is focused on better support for mental illness. We know that keeping people safe involves making sure they're safe from gun violence, which is why we've created red flag and yellow flag laws that make it harder for people charged or convicted with intimate partner violence to get their hands on firearms, because that's a big part of how we move forward and keeping communities safe. We know there's more to do around community supports, around interventions, around community policing, which is why we're continuing to invest in programs that are doing that. But it's an all-of-society, all-of-government approach that we have to make sure that tragedies like this no longer happen.
This concludes our press conference. Thank you for participating.
J'étais prêt à répéter quelque chose en français. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez en français? Which one? Just tell me which one.
Ceasefire.
Okay. La situation dans le Proche-Orient nous préoccupe énormément et donc nous allons continuer d'appeler pour une pause humanitaire significative qui va permettre à la protection de la vie civile des Palestiniens et des Juifs. On va être là pour livrer plus d'aide, de ressources, d'aide humanitaire à Gaza. On va continuer de pousser pour qu'on lâche les otages. On va continuer de pousser pour sortir les civils, y compris les Canadiens, de Gaza. Mais surtout, on va continuer de travailler pour avoir une solution à 2 États. Un État palestinien libre, sécure, prospère, à côté d'un État juif en Israël, libre, sécure, prospère. C'est ce que nous voulons tous et c'est sur quoi nous nous concentrons aujourd'hui et à tous les jours. Merci.
This concludes our press conference. Thank you, folks.
Merci beaucoup.